Hello and welcome to episode number 71 of the Nintendo Jump Podcast. We are a weekly discussion podcast created for Nintendo gamers by Nintendo gamers. It's the week of October 28th. Specifically, it's Halloween as we're recording this. So if you hear kids screaming in the background, it's not our fault. My name is Daryl. And today I'm once again joined by Sergio. How are you, man?
Hey, Daryl. I'm doing awesome. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm just happy to be joined by you and Kevin. How are you, man?
I'm doing very well. I'm not going to get into it, but I have kombucha and green tea separate. So that's all I got for that. I haven't been sponsored. I don't know if I'll ever be, but if the company that I've talked about for a long time is hearing this,
please don't sponsor us. Please don't.
Is there anything kombucha Halloween related? Is there like a pumpkin flavor or something?
Oh, I hope there's a pumpkin spice.
Oh, I wish there was, but I just have.
I bet there is.
There have to be, but right now I'm just drinking strawberry basil, which is like nothing related to pumpkin. Anyway,
they are both plants, technically.
True.
So this week we're actually going to have a pretty short episode from our side, but there's a reason for that. Kevin, what are we talking about?
Well, we're going to talk about Killer Queen Black with our reviews, some of the people from the NJP community's reviews, and we have a special interview from two of the Killer Queen Black devs. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I actually got to have a call with Adam and Mike from the development team over at Liquidbit of Killer Queen Black. It was an awesome time. We talked for about 40 minutes on their game, and you're going to hear that at the end of this episode. So, yeah, please look forward to it. I learned a lot in that, so it was a lot of fun. So, awesome.
Nice.
So I think with that, we've been talking about Killer Queen Black for almost a month. As we started this game of the month thing where we all decided to play a game for a month, and then at the end, have fun together. But at the end, actually review it, talk about it, talk about what the month was like playing it. So for October, it was Killer Queen Black, which came out just about a week and a half into October, and has kind of dominated our community's multiplayer gaming since then. I mean, I think almost every night somebody has been playing it. People have been like partying up and going through ranked mode and such. It's really gotten some legs, so it's been really, really nice to see that it's caught on so well. I think with that though, like Sergio, you played it with us. What are your initial thoughts of the game?
My initial thoughts, I like it a lot, and I can tell that it's, like you said, it's a big multiplayer experience, but it has a lot going for it. It's very pick up and play, and it's fun, but that's on the surface. But if you really get into it, there's a lot of different strategies, because as we discussed on some previous episodes, there are 3 different ways to win. And with that, there can be so many different strategies. You can focus on either of those 3, or you can try to psych your opponents into, switching your strategies on the fly. And I think it opens up a lot of opportunities, a lot of thinking, fast thinking and fast playing. It's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just all the strategies that come into it too, and then just the role of the queen is so nuanced. I mean, it's really tough to be the queen because you're trying to stay alive. At the same time, you're trying to facilitate the whole stage and trying to make sure that your workers have access to the gates. You want to make sure that you can defend the snail somehow. Like, there are times where you should defend the snail, but most of the time you just want to stay alive and try to kind of like be a point guard, like in a basketball team. Like, you're that point guard, you're the coach. And and just like the workers, especially when you get that econ victory, like, it's so sneaky. Like, they're just it's like on the surface it's a simple game, but beneath it there's just these strategies that you can employ. And I mean, I think we're just barely scratching the surface on this game.
Well, it almost feels like it's multiple simple games, like all just kind of melded into one, right? Like, it feels like different people are playing different games at the same time. the workers are doing stuff completely different than the queen is. If the worker becomes a soldier, their role completely changes.
Yes.
Right.
And like it somehow meshes, and it does it really well. I think just to get into a little bit of the background of the game. So Killer Queen is a famous arcade game. If you haven't heard of it for some reason, it's a 5-on-5 arcade game that was developed by Bumble Bear Games, and it gained a lot of traction. They intended to kind of make one, and then got a lot of hype around it and made a bunch more. So odds are, if you Google it, you can find a Killer Queen machine somewhere near you. But that was kind of the extent of their vision. They wanted to make arcade games, and they did, and a great one. But the team at Liquidbit actually approached them with, I learned in this interview, already established tech for making games online and actually getting games to run online. And they kind of fell in love with Killer Queen and approached that team and said, "Hey, we want, we already have this prototype. Hey, take a look, and we want to put your game on consoles and make it online." So all of that aside, I mean, there were a lot of changes that they made, but they've kept a lot of the core gameplay, which is at its heart an arcade game. It really plays like an arcade game. The actual arcade game plays a lot like the classic Joust. This one is a little bit different. It has attack buttons and such, so it plays a little bit different. But the roots are still there. Like, you just play like you feel like you're playing an arcade game with like the scrolling stages and everything. But it's just fun. Like you said, it's got 3 ways to win. They're all completely different. They all kind of go hand in hand, and it's the first game since Splatoon that I've played that it kind of just feels like everybody is contributing in their own way. Right? And that's kind of cool. Like, one person could literally be dying, running back to the snail to try to get on it and ride it, dying, running back to the snail to try to get on, and actually contributing to their team's success. It's great. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and that's what I really like about it too. And like, as you said, like, everyone has a role. Like, someone could be, trying to get to the snail and dying and just trying to get back. Another person could be a worker and becoming like a soldier and defending the person trying to get to the snail and making sure that that worker has, is able to gain more traction and try to get to the finish line as soon as possible. And then you have another worker who can just be a sneaky econ person, or I guess you might need 2 of those for that. But as a note, there is a local arcade here in Portland called Ground Control that does have a Killer Queen machine, which I need to go and play. I have not played it yet, and it actually, I've heard from coworkers that there are tournaments run there, and I'm like, wow, this is awesome, because when you think of an arcade, you don't think of like like these these big tournaments that occur, like, at least for me. But having this game just coming out of nowhere and captivating all the arcades around the nation, like, that's incredible. Or hopefully more arcades, because if I'm correct, there's only like 100 of these in the nation. I'm not sure. I mean, if there's only 100, there should be more. But yeah, like, it really feels nice having like an arcade Joust like game like on your Switch. I think that's why, like, a lot of us are so addicted, and just being able to play on the go or just play at home and just get competitive with it. You never feel like you're not contributing. You're always in the game. You're always, engaged. And win or lose, we're all having a good time. So,
yeah, and I think to add to that is that the matches can be over pretty quickly. So if you lose, that's fine. There's another chance coming right at the corner, and you pick up and play and keep doing what you're doing. And like we said, it's very team based, so you definitely want to keep an eye on what your team is doing, what their power ups are, what the strategy is at the moment, because it can change at any moment, and I think that's part of the fun as well. Another thing that really surprised me is how different the stages are, and at the same time, they all have the ability for all 3 conditions to be met. And you may not like one part of the stage. For example, there's a stage that I'm not too fond of, the way the warp or like the holes at the top and the bottom are connected. But there are parts of the stage that I do like the way the econ areas are set. So there's always something to like about each stage, and basically they're all pretty good for all the three strategies.
Yeah, one thing I really like, so I typically try to go, so at the start of the game, you pick your preference, whether you want to play the queen character or whether you want to play one of the three workers. So the queen is a very, as Kevin was kind of getting into, a very stressful role at times.
Yes.
Where, I mean, if you die 3 times, the game is over, your team loses, and that's a lot. At the same time, the queen also has to be flying around, trying to color these gates. And what these gates are, each gate allows a worker to upgrade. And whether that's just becoming a super fast worker or actually turning into a warrior with a sword or a mace that spins around or a gun, if the gates are not your color, the worker can't upgrade. So the queen has to kind of be doing this loop to try to hit the gates while not dying, while trying to kill things around her. It's a very complicated role. Bear with me, because for newer players, you don't have to play that role. You can play a worker, trying to advance a snail or trying to become a soldier while you kind of learn the game. That's one thing I really like about it, is how accessible it is for, hey, throw a controller to your friend. You've never played this game before. No worries. Go get the berries and try to get them in these holes. That's your role. You're playing Mario now. That's pretty much it. But the one thing what I personally like doing is I try to be a worker most of the time, because I can play queen, but it's just not my favorite role. But I try to upgrade into an attacker as quickly as I can, so that I'm then helping my queen out, either defending or attacking or whatever, however the match flow kind of works. The cool thing about that is each map has different gate positions for upgrades, to the point that some maps actually don't have the same upgrades. Like, only certain maps have the gun, only certain maps have the mace or the sword, and the placement and the abilities of each gate are set, but they're all different. So it leaves each match. I personally prefer the sword, so the maps that don't have sword, I'm like, oh no, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, when that happens, like, I just be the gunner, and honestly, that is the hardest type of worker you can be, because you get one shot and you have to wait for it to recharge, then you can shoot again. But for some reason, it is my favorite role to play, even though it is so hard to use, because you can just try to be in the back, trying to sneak that shot in and get the queen, or get one of the strong workers who has the speed ability and maybe like an attacker or a mace or whatever. It's just, yeah, I don't know. I really like the way, like as Zero said, like the stages are just they're different, and with there's certain abilities that occur that only happen in certain stages, and I think it just helps you become more adaptable to certain situations. Like, you can't always be like a warrior, you can't always be a mace. Like, you have to figure out different ways, different strategies, and I think it just keeps you on your toes. And man,
the other thing is, like, even though there are different stages with very different layouts, I think they do a really good job of keeping the 3 win conditions pretty balanced, to be honest.
Yeah.
Whereas, if one team is really focusing on trying to advance the snail, they give up on econ immediately, try to advance the snail, try to defend it. That is generally a viable strategy. Also viable is just a team trying to force the econ and going to run berries and bring them back to your hive, and that's it.
Yeah.
And like one character trying to defend them or something. Another potentially viable strategy, which is kind of silly, is all of you go attackers and just go try to kill the other queen, like chase her around the entire match, which is sometimes successful, sometimes not, but it's always funny. So it's just, I really appreciate that you have these 3 very distinct conditions and goals, but they still find a way to really keep them as balanced. I'm sure there is a quote unquote best strategy for each map or each team or something like that, but from the outset, it's not readily apparent. Like, it kind of feels like you can just kind of attack this game on any map however you want, and that's actually kind of nice.
Yeah, that's true. One thing I did want to get your comments on, because we mostly we have been playing with friends, and we talk on Discord, and what one comment that I read on some of the reviews out there is that the experience is not the same when you're playing with random people online. I don't
Oh
know if you
yeah.
guys have a chance to do that, but do you believe that is the case?
That
Yeah.
is absolutely the case. Like I remember playing this game at 2:30 in the morning and just trying to find and playing ranked and just trying to find people to play and oh boy, like being just trying to communicate not even through voice but just, trying to communicate through actions and, being the worker or even being the queen. It's so difficult because, it seems like everybody who is on your team has their own agenda, myself included, because I don't know, like I don't know what. It's hard to see what they're all trying to do. It's better when you have people that you can play with, and then you can define your roles. Like, hey, I'm gonna be the person who gets the snail victory. I'm gonna be the person defending the person trying to get the snail victory. Uh, being to the people who do the econ victory, or just as a queen, just trying to stay alive and trying to get as many gates as possible, and trying to nullify the chances of the other workers powering up as workers. So it's just, or becoming more powerful workers. So yeah, I try not to play randoms if I can, but sometimes I can't.
I'll
help
say
it.
this: I play some random, and I still have a good time with the game. The one thing that you got to kind of understand when you're going into random is you don't know the skill level of your partners going
Yeah.
in, and if you end up with a bad queen, for example, again, queen dies 3 times, you die.
Yes.
Like that's
Yeah.
it. That can happen extremely quickly in certain cases, and you just lose. And as a worker, you have maybe you had one chance to maybe affect the outcome of the game, but honestly, it was kind of doomed from the start. Uh, However, that's one, either, you can learn queen and just set it up so you always become queen and then you kind of control that part. Or two, there is built-in voice chat on Switch, which is kind of a rarity, actually. It's push to talk, so you hit the R button and you can talk and you can hear other people and actually coordinate if they're willing and hear you. But
Yeah.
it's I don't I think that the experience with randoms is fine. It's roughly equatable to their experience with randoms in Splatoon. It's a team-based game. If your teammates are garbage, you're gonna have less of a fun time. But if they're good, then you're fine. It's just kind of a gamble, and I think that's just kind of what you go into the game knowing. I would suggest, if you do end up picking Killer Queen Black, which picking it up, which I would recommend, hop in our Discord or somebody else's Discord and get a team together, because it's a lot of fun to kind of train together and say, okay, this match is a 3 out of 5. We're going to try to win every way. So 1 snail victory, 1 military, 1 econ. I love doing that stuff.
Oh.
It's just kind of fun.
Yeah, and I think it's important to do that because you get to learn from your teammates. Maybe there's a certain tactic that you may not have realized until you talk to your teammate after like a close match that you could have won, and be like, oh, okay, maybe I'll be aware of this next time that the situation happens. And so, which is why playing with people that is honestly a much better experience. But I think I can see what you're saying, Daryl, about playing with randoms. As a failsafe, it is good to play the queen so that you can just dictate. I mean, dictate being the queen and just ensuring that you are making the best decisions for the team, even if your workers are not that great. But at least you got the queen position, and you're handling the situation. Well, you have more of a responsibility for the match.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's man. Oh, Killer Queen Black. There is just I don't know. Like I personally think this should be more popular. I don't know how many people have bought this game yet, but hopefully, I'm hoping this could have the same level of like competition in terms of like the popularity, the just and how big it can be, as much as like League of Legends. I mean, this is a pretty awesome game, and it's quick, and I mean, I rarely find myself in situations where I get angry, like in Call of Duty, because in Call of Duty, things happen where you just want to throw your controller down. But in Killer Queen Black, I have never found myself in that sort of situation.
It's just not that much of a time commitment, as you were kind of saying.
Yeah.
like it's hard to feel too mad about it when games are over after a couple minutes and you're like, oh, okay, move on.
Right.
There's some things we could have done, but oh well. uh, I don't know. To be honest, I don't have that many negatives on the game. Like the only things I can say are, uh, you know, I kind of already said, the queen roll is a little stressful, and if you have a bad queen, that's a little hard. But that's just a game design thing, and it makes it more rewarding when you actually have a good team to put together. So I don't mind that too much. In terms of actual technical, the technical aspect of the game, I was saying before release, please don't lag, please don't lag. I am super impressed with how they've actually pulled off the online of this game. Just because, you've got 8 people going. In our Discord, we've had 8 people, from across the nation going at the same time. And the way they've done it, they have each person communicating with a dedicated server. So absolute worst case, you see one person kind of jumping around a little bit, and it really doesn't affect your game, and that's it. Like, it runs really, really well in my experience, and I'm very happy to see that this $20 indie game comes to Switch, which is not exactly known for its online play at times, and runs as well as it does. I think it's phenomenal in that aspect.
Yeah, I don't know what else there could be mentioned about it. I mean, there's very little to gripe about. I personally have not encountered any lag issues. Hard to believe, right? Because with any online game, you would think, oh, there's this one moment where I'm like, oh god, it's lagging. Because in Rocket League that happened quite a bit, but in Killer Queen Black, it just never happens. And
I've had no personal stutter, and that's the thing that kills me in games when the whole game starts chugging. Haven't had that once. Like that's great. That's fantastic. To, go show Nintendo how to do that sometimes. I mean, I kid. I love Splatoon, and Nintendo actually does a pretty good job as well. But then I think back to things like Triforce Heroes that just chugged like crazy when somebody was lagging, and it really didn't need to. But, ouch. But I don't know. I'm super impressed with how the game actually runs, which was the one fear that I kind of had going into it. And the other fear I kind of had was, okay, how long is this game actually going to be interesting? Can you just keep playing it over and over and over? And, for the month that we've played it, yeah. Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, if anything, we're gonna add it to the rotation of multiplayer games that we have, and there's a lot of games that we play and that have been out for years. Splatoon 2, Rocket League, Smash, Mario Kart, even. So, Killer Queen Black, join in the ranks.
I mean, we've got a dedicated channel for it. I have no intention of taking that down anytime soon. So,
right.
I think it's our second biggest rank of people who have actually signed up for notifications on our Discord. So, yeah, people are hyped, and it's nice to see. So. Yeah, long live the queen. So, I think we can get into some final thoughts, but first we actually have some listener reviews. You guys want to jump into those?
Yeah, sure.
All right, we're gonna start with actually we got one voice submission from our good friend Dragon, so we're gonna listen to that now.
Hello, this is Dragon, and I'm here to contribute for our Game of the Month review for Killer Queen Black. So Killer Queen Black is a game that I didn't initially see myself picking up, but when I bought into the hype and then I picked it up and we played, and it's been a blast so far. So we've been having a lot of fun. We've been playing with our friends in our community. I've really loved the queen role. It's a highly aggressive role, but it's also very management, very logical, very committal role that you have to take. But in that sense, I find it the most rewarding, just because you have this burden where you're at any time you can cost the match, but at the same time you have the most weight in a lot of ways of what decides the outcome of the match. So I personally find that very rewarding, and so far it's just been great. The other day I promoted to gold rank in this game, which has been I was really happy about. I really couldn't have done it without our friends. And yeah, I've been loving this game. I would highly recommend it. I feel like I've been very pleasantly surprised. I haven't been this pleasantly surprised by a game since the likes of Celeste and Dark Souls. So yeah, just been really enjoying it. And I would just highly recommend this game. I would rate it maybe like an 8.5 out of 10 on that scale. It's really good, and yeah, I believe this game will be a viable online game for us for the foreseeable future. So far, it's just been very good matching up wise. It doesn't take too long to get into a match, and I don't really see it going away from that. But we'll see. Well, that's my review. Thank you.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, and kudos for Dragon for reaching gold rank. I mean, the guy is obviously talented at video games, so I'm not surprised that he got that gold rank. I mean, man, it's I agree. I mean, and an 8.5 out of 10 is that's like a pretty awesome score. I would actually rate it around the same too. I mean, or even maybe a 9. It's just, oh gosh, I don't know what to say. It's a pretty good game.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can hold off on our scores for just a second so I can keep thinking about it. But Sergio, we also have a couple text submissions of reviews. Sergio, you want to read some parts of Shy Guys?
Sure. So Shy Guy left us a text review for Killer Queen Black, and he says he has two favorite aspects of the game. So the game is focused on fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It's over the top, but in a good way, and with the metal music and imagery. It doesn't try to do something that it isn't. Killer Queen Black is a simple, well executed, and accessible game to enjoy with friends. Another thing that he liked is that the game is incredibly well balanced. But Shy Guy does point out a couple of things he doesn't like. First of all, playing with random people on the team isn't very fun. Also, the time between matches can feel excessive and take you out of the experience. I kind of agree with this a little bit, but this might be patched up a little bit in the future. And another thing for Shy, the lag can cause some major and noticeable issues at critical moments. Again, I feel like this is on a personal case-by-case basis, but if there is lag, I can see why it would affect you.
Yeah, for sure.
So overall, thanks to Shy Guy, he says it's an easy to start, tough to master, simple yet deep, fun arcade game that's tons of fun to enjoy with friends. Very highly recommended. Thank you, Shy Guy.
Yeah, awesome. So a couple things actually. The time between matches at times, it can take a little bit long to actually find a match for you. I find it takes longer when you are kind of a full team of differently ranked people. I think it has a little bit of a challenge matching you up with an equally ranked team.
Right.
But it's honestly, yeah, sometimes it takes a little long. Sometimes it's really snappy. So I think it's just kind of time of day. And this is one reason we're reviewing this. More people need to buy this game and play it with us because it's awesome. And as far as the lag, actually, that was one thing that came up in the interview that you're going to hear in just a few minutes. They are doing some updates to improve the lag even from where it is. They were talking about reducing 20 milliseconds off of the latency, which is incredible. That's really cool. So hopefully they can get there. Like I said, to me, I haven't had any issues with it, and I'm actually really happy about that. But yeah, so that's awesome. Kevin, you wanna read some parts of Naprat's review?
Yeah, sure. So Naprat talks about how his favorite part of Killer Queen so far is the hidden strengths of the worker bee in affecting the outcome of each match. He also mentions that if you're attempting to be evasive, you can use a quick jump to get over and around soldiers and above queens. And jumping on their heads is almost always a safe thing to do and alters their fight trajectories enough to make a difference in some cases. And that's a pretty good point that he made. It's interesting that jumping on their heads is a very good strat because you're avoiding them and then you're just trying to. I mean, it just throws them off and. So Nat also mentions that as a worker, you want to 1, stay alive, 2, annoy the other player, 3, get them to single-mindedly focus on taking care of the little worker, forgetting what else is happening around them or elsewhere on the map. And, he mentions that it feels like a super simplified platform fighting game, even easier to learn than Smash for me. And I totally agree. Like, this is such an easy game to pick up and play.
Much easier than Smash.
Like,
Smash is not an easy game to learn.
No, I mean, like, with Smash, there's different, like, mechanics, the B moves, the forward air, back air, all that. I mean, it can get quite a bit. But with Killer Queen Black, you can pick it up within, I believe, like 10 to 15 minutes. Like, it's easy.
Yeah. So, Naprak got on something that I personally really like about the game. Like, the game, to me, really becomes, like, the art of distracting the enemy queen with stuff. Like, so if a worker is doing something that is, going to lead to a problem for the other team, the queen sometimes feels like they need to come deal with it personally. When they do, if you have an attacker kind of helping your worker there, you can get some easy queen kills just by, because if they try to attack the worker, it's kind of a commitment, and then you can punish that. And I love seeing that. So when Naprat is being a worker and just like, hopping around trying to annoy them, I try to stay as close to him as possible as an attacking unit and just wait for the queen to come by. It's so much fun. I love that. And Shy Guy mentioned his 2 favorite ways to win: riding the snail with an entourage, which is kind of what I'm talking about. So one person riding the snail and 1 or 2 people, protecting them, or the sneaky econ win. So when the entire game is focused in a different area, and all of a sudden the econ win comes out, and everybody goes, "Oh no!"
What?
So, what are your guys' favorite ways to win?
Man, it's hard because I think for some of the more recent matches, like, I really do like econ, but I still like the snail. The snail is just like, it's broadcasted, it's in your face, like, what's coming, the train's coming, the snail's coming. Is like, you're about to win, there's nothing you can do. It's like, time's up. But then it's a 70-30 split between the snail and the econ. Military's, military, it's very, very straightforward. You kill the queen 3 times, but to me, it's a very boring way to win, but sometimes it's necessary. You gotta kill the queen 3 times.
Well, military generally comes from advancing one of the other ones. Generally.
True, yeah.
All right, Sergio.
I'm with Kevin. I like the snail personally, but I think I also agree that the econ win is the most surprising. Whether you win or lose because of it is still very surprising.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to sweep it for Team Snail here. I think that is the best way to win. So, if not using the snail as a decoy for to kill the queen.
Right.
So, yeah, that would be my personal favorite. All right. It's time. Final scores, final thoughts. You're on the spot. Killer Queen Black. Sergio, what are you giving it?
I was going to give it a lower score at first, but considering that it is an arcade game, it's based on 1, and that's what it is, so there's really no single player because it doesn't really need to be. I'm going to give it an 8.5.
Wow, nice.
I think I said before, if not already, I'm going to say 9 out of 10. It's a very clean game, and I'm looking forward to more content in the future, hopefully. I don't know, but man, I'm excited. Just the potential for this to be such a big scene, the esports thingamabobber. I don't know. It's just
you can see it. Like, you can definitely see this game getting big. I personally hope it does. It's hard to predict at this point, but I hope it does. And I mean, for me, if you couldn't already tell, it's a 9. It's definitely a 9. It is among my games of the year right now. I'm not sure if it would be in my top spot or so, but IGN, which is our ranking system that we use, ranks a 9 as an amazing game. I think this is one. I think it's one of the best multiplayer games on Switch, period. In terms of like team-based online multiplayer, for sure. right there with Splatoon, which I can't believe I'm saying, but yeah, it's right there. So
It's
Yeah.
a must-have. A
Nice.
must-have game.
I think it's a very, very, very highly recommended game, and we're going to give it the official NJP seal of approval. There you go. So, Killer Queen Black, please pick it up. And as I mentioned, I think we're gonna start wrapping this, but please, stay tuned just a little bit later for the developer interview. That was a lot of fun. So, awesome. So, Sergio, do you have a question for us?
Yes. Last week's question was, what makes you stick with gaming? And we got a pretty heartfelt and pretty thoughtful answer by Dragon. In short, he told us that any game for him that creates a universe and gets him engrossed into the game, the story, the character, it just keeps him coming back to that game and that series. More so than games just being fun, if they can be more than that, if they can be deeper and engrossing, he really likes that. And I agree. Do you guys have anything to add? Why do you keep coming back to games?
I think it's not just the experiencing alternate universe versus and all that, but I think it really exercises the imagination. Being able to just imagine this different world and just putting yourself into the character's shoes, as Dragon has alluded to, and also not only that, but more so to learn about different qualities that a character can have, and being able to take those qualities, sometimes incorporating it into your own life, your own character, your own personality. I think it's a very powerful medium, and that's why I play games.
Nice.
Honestly, what keeps me coming back to games is people to play with. I've been fairly vocal about my struggle to keep interest in single player games, particularly RPGs lately, but just, I don't know, it's hard for me to keep going back, but the games like Smash and Rocket League and Splatoon and Fortnite and Overwatch, I always want to play those games with people, so somebody will ping the group and say, hey, anybody up? And I'm like, yes. yes, I am. So ultimately what keeps me coming back to games is people. So, yeah.
That was
Nice,
going to be my
awesome.
honorable mention. But no, that's a really important point. And I mean, without the community, without the people that we play with, video games would not be possible. So I have to say that.
Definitely. And I am happy to say that I am playing games again and playing games on the Switch. I am playing
Hooray!
Luigi's Mansion 3.
Oh, nice.
Ooh.
Okay,
And
so
I am loving it.
we kind of leaked this and told people and such, but we've now wrapped up our October Game of the Month discussion. So it's time to look into November. Our November Game of the Month is Luigi's Mansion because it came out today.
Yes.
And it's fantastic, and it has multiplayer, and it has a really good single player from what I've played so far. I love it. So yeah, Luigi's Mansion, please join us again for a November of playing Luigi's Mansion and Pokemon when it comes out. But
Oh man, it's gonna be tough.
We'll talk a lot about Luigi and play a lot with the community and such. And then at the end of the month, again, same thing. We'll have a full review, and I will get, I don't know, Miyamoto to come on our show and do an interview. So, book
Gosh, that
Book
would
it.
be incredible. You hear that, Mr. Miyamoto? Please make this happen.
I'll do my best, guys. It's not gonna happen.
No, not gonna. Well, I'm gonna knock on wood.
What if we does anyone know a Luigi? That works, right?
No.
Yeah,
We
a
have
guy
Luigi.
named Luigi. It's time for a one-on-one with a guy named Luigi. How are you, sir? Okay.
If we
this is-
were to get an interview with Mr. Miyamoto, we have to have Peachy on because he is the #1 Luigi fan ever. I mean,
Oh,
right? No.
All right, Sergio, what's the question for this week?
well, yes. Speaking of, the question for this week is as follows:
Oh.
would you rather have a pet Eevee or a pet Polterpup, and why?
Oh my God, that is no contest. But I will hold off. So it's
Dun, dun,
Eevee
dun.
versus Polterpup.
Yes.
No contest.
Man, that is like, ooh. Well,
It's not even close.
we're
Not even close. And the answer might surprise you. It won't surprise you. But anyways, oh, excellent question. And we will put out a poll for that before the next episode. So look forward to that.
Nice. And
Cool.
definitely let us know in the Discord. But yeah, with that, thanks for listening, everyone. We're going to jump out of here. But you can keep the discussion going by chatting with us on our Discord group. The description for this episode has a link to our Discord if you would like to join. We are also on Twitter and on Instagram as Nintendo Jump, and we also have a Facebook group. Please send us any feedback you have at NintendoJumpPodcast@gmail.com. The best way to support this show is through our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/NintendoJump, or by leaving a review for the show in your favorite podcast application. We would really appreciate it. And well, since this is Halloween, this is Scargio, and on behalf of Scarol and Scarvin, thank you for listening. Stay tuned for our interview with the development team of Killer Queen Black, and we hope you have a great week. Bye-bye.
Hey, it's Dare Ghoul, okay?
Man.
Dare
Oh.
Ghoul.
I have no comment.
And Kevin Stein.
Oh,
You know what? I actually like that. That's not a terrible name.
All right, so try Sergio. It's Scargio, Dare Ghoul, and Kevin Stein.
Yeah.
Signing out.
Yes.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, hello, and welcome to another one-on-one with Daryl. Today, I am super excited to be joined with two members from Liquid Bit, Adam and Mike. How are you guys?
Good. Doing well, thanks.
So for anybody who's not aware at this point, Liquid Bit is the developer of Killer Queen Black, which is, as you guys know, our game of the month for October. So all this month we've been talking about it. This is going to be linked to our actual full review of the game itself and just kind of a final breakdown. I'm super excited for this. So I guess just to kind of jump in quickly, can you guys quickly talk about your actual involvement with the game, like your different roles?
Sure. So Mike and I'm the CTO. Mike is chief architect. But we're a studio of three. Matt Tesh is our CEO and kind of, big time, like doing all the production and coordinating between, all the different people, like contractors and ourselves and features.
Sure.
But Mike and I are primarily, in the code developing.
Oh, that's awesome. So you guys are going to be the ones that I'll be able to get into all the balancing and how we actually got this game. That's great. Can you tell us a little bit about actual Liquid Bit? Like, how did you guys come to be? How did you guys form? What have you worked on? That kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a really interesting story, actually. It kind of goes back quite a ways, but to give you kind of the skinny of it, the three of us, me, Matt, and Adam, we used to work together at a company called Okta. I actually worked with Matt at a company before that called Fueled. We merged with Okta, Adam came on, and then our company got acquired by Salesforce. So we've been working together for a long time. We used to build mobile apps, actually. Nice. We were building iPhone apps, and one of our clients, this dude from Texas, man, he was just like, "Hey, I've got some capital. I want to build a video game. Why don't you guys, I don't know what you're doing there at Salesforce, but if you want, let's start a company and see what we can make of it." So that was like 3 years ago. And it's like a really weird story. Like, this never happens, right? But yeah, we did. We we put in our 2 weeks notice and we started this thing. Been doing it ever since. So I went to school for game programming. Adam didn't have any game development experience, but we worked on a lot of stuff together, and we're confident that we could do something that wasn't like, a full like AAA 3D shooter or something, So
Which, by the way, thank you.
right, yeah, seen enough of those.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. I mean, it's not every day like somebody just approaches you, "Hey, I got lots of money, do something."
I know, right? Yeah, it was kind of crazy. It's been a wild ride. A lot of learning. It took us about 3 years to build this. And we knew we wanted it to be like some kind of networked, multiplayer game, some kind of team-based thing. We didn't know what that was going to be, but we were just kind of building the tech around that to try to get that going. We did that for a long time. We didn't even have a game. We just had like this prototype. Mm-hmm. But we went to Logan Arcade here in Chicago, and they have, Killer Queen Arcade, 10-player, 2 teams of 5, awesome game that we played and fell in love with. Like, wow, wouldn't it be great if we could somehow do something like that? We built a prototype pretty quickly, and we got in contact with Bumble Bear Games, guys in New York that actually built the arcade. We sent them a demo of what we had. We played it, and they're like, wow, this is actually better than we thought it would be. Shortly after that, we flew out to New York, and we did like a little game jam with them, kicked around some ideas, and then started a formal, partnership. And we've been working with them ever since, yeah.
That's awesome. So you had kind of the tech built, and we're just looking for a game to to throw it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Came across one of the coolest arcade games there is.
Like I said, we fell in love with it. And the partnership we formed with them has been really great because, obviously Mike and I are very much on the technical side of things. We like video games and whatnot, but don't really know that much about designing them. And Josh and Nick are both game designers who obviously put a lot of care in that game and are really great at what they do. So kind of like we complement each other really well in that sense. That was kind of a big missing thing from our perspective. I know they've enjoyed having us, hashing out the tech stuff with them. So it's been a really great partnership and great experience.
That's awesome. I didn't know any of that. So, you took this arcade game that is huge actually, and you kind of you went through the route of putting this on a console. I mean, what would you say are like the biggest challenges to actually getting it on the console? Was it more of making sure it was stable online, or more like process oriented challenges? Can you talk through some of that?
Sure. I mean, definitely there was technical challenges, not necessarily just console, but when we were developing the tech beyond wanting it to be an online game, it was really important for us to make it cross-platform, and that's something Mike, he's kind of been our network guy, and just really cranked out and built it from the ground up, knowing that. So it's never been like we were locked into a PC only networking option or some proprietary service that maybe one of the big, console makers provides, that maybe is more challenging to integrate between the two. So having that from the get-go, networking is always hard, but I think we kind of mitigated a lot of that risk by knowing up front and always keeping that, in the back of our minds that, cross-platform is super important to us. And so, there's definitely challenges, especially with like UI stuff between the platforms, different hardware specs, all those things have always been the case. Do you got any that come to mind?
Well, I mean, like, maybe to take a step back, really, it's like you're talking about like a 10-player arcade game, right? You want to bring that to console, and we knew that like multiplayer was going to be like the cornerstone of that. We knew it needed to work. Excuse me, it needed to work well over the internet, and the experience had to be, just about the same as you standing next to somebody at the arcade.
Sure.
Some of the design choices that we had to make to accommodate for that are kind of what you see in the differences between Killer Queen Black and Killer Queen Arcade. Like, namely, we have weapons, right? It's no longer like a joust mechanic where, the highest player wins, because we found out very early on that basing kills on height, like who was the highest, when they contacted, wasn't going to work in a network environment. Because, due to latency and things, I might see you higher on my screen, but you see yourself lower or something, right? There's always like paradoxes. Anybody that's played multiplayer games is very familiar with these like paradoxes. So we knew that we needed more kind of like a wiggle room. So we started toying around with the idea of kind of like area of attack weapons and things like this to give a little bit more of a buffer, so that you could, it was more based on positioning and where you were strategically, and not necessarily precise, like, you know, I was 2 pixels above you kind of a thing.
Or like when you hit the button, you know, that, you know, if you get a miss, it's, you know, there's times when it's just like, hey, you were just too slow doing it, not something that's just automatic and, you know, triggered.
Right, so you basically have it checking when each person hits the button, as opposed to just like a consistent height basis.
Yeah, I mean, it still like is doing kind of like collision checks and things like this, but I think that the important thing is that it's kind of more of a volume. So there's a little bit of like, when you play the game, it does for the most part feel like you did get the kill if you got it, right? Due to those volumes. And then, like, you know, honestly, we knew that like region-based matchmaking was going to be really important, because like in order for you to have a good experience, you need to have low latency. So we want to make sure that people in the same region are kind of playing together. So like a lot of different kind of factors went into like the decisions that we made and the design choices that we made that became, you know, what you see today in Black.
Yeah, that's awesome. Actually, like, as the game was coming out, I mean, there was this overall thought of the uninformed masses of like, oh, please don't lag, please don't lag, please don't lag. But honestly, I mean, our group, you know, we have been playing on Nintendo Switch, which is not exactly known for really, really solid online play. I think I can fire a little bit of shots there. But it, you know, any lag at all is like reduced to one person that's kind of skipping around a little bit. I've actually been really impressed with just how the game actually handles lag, even in like cross-nation play. Like, a lot of us are kind of strewn out, so that's been really cool to see.
Well, that's really great to hear. I mean, we worked really hard on that, and it was something that was very important from the get-go. We feel like the game is we were targeting about 100 milliseconds. Like, you know, if you've got about 100 milliseconds, of latency, you could still be pretty competitive. Anything beyond that, it starts to break down a little bit. But we still have a few more tricks up our sleeve in terms of how we're trying to reduce latency. We're working with a partner, a company called Network Next, where they actually provide premium routes through the internet, like a private network.
Nice.
So that you can you pay like a premium, but you have like lower latency and lower jitter and things like this. So even people that aren't playing in the same region should get a better experience. And through our testing, we've seen improvements of up to like 20 milliseconds in some cases. So
oh wow,
yeah, it's significant. We're really excited. We're coming out with that pretty soon. Like it's going to be in our next patch, most certainly. So.
Oh, I mean, that trends right into what I was gonna get into next. Actually, if you can you talk about some of the updates you're actually planning for the game? Are we looking to see any more maps or modes or weapons or anything like that?
Yeah, yes to pretty much all of those. The things I can talk about, maps, like we basically kind of loop all that or group all that together as, content. So having new maps, there's new weapons that we've prototyped and want to continue to experiment with that will hopefully roll out at some time. Cosmetic things like new skins for the workers or queens.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's kind of, I guess, the main things I can think of from the content side. The thing I've been working on right now, which I can't give a date on when it'll be done, making good progress, is cross-party friends. We try to stay active with the community, like in our Discord, or through Reddit or whatever. And we know that's kind of something that, it just, to be honest, we ran out of time to get to the launch. So like it's cross-platform right now in the sense that everyone is put in the same pool and can compete against one another. So if you're on a Switch, you can, you go to rank match, you could be playing against a PC person as well as a Switch on the same team, all that. What you can't do is like enter a friend code and become friends with someone on a different platform. And then, which kind of prevents you from being able to like party up, which, it's always been something we wanted to do. And so we're kind of focusing on trying to get that done now. That's one I think we're all pretty excited about.
No, that sounds awesome. We do have some players who are playing the game currently on PC as well as Switch, and we've had some of those conversations too. So that's great to hear. So can you talk a little bit about some of the changes that you've actually made from Killer Queen Arcade? Because I think we've kind of got into it, and obviously there's new weapons. It's down to four versus four. You can throw berries and such. Can you talk about how some of that came to be, what the design methods were?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was, Nintendo Switch was on our radar. Sorry, excuse me. Nintendo Switch was on our radar. We weren't sure that we were going to be on that platform, but we knew that like we wanted to be, right? So we knew that we needed to design for like a smaller screen size. And so it was like important that you be able to like kind of make out certain details in that like smaller form factor. If you look, I believe like one of the major differences between arcade and black is like the size of the characters with respect to the size of the platforms. Like I think we're the opposite of them actually, right? Like the characters are like really tiny in the arcade and the platforms are like big. And in black, it's kind of the opposite. And I think part of the reason for that is because like a lot of our weapons are like very dashy. Like you're moving around a lot. It's kind of zany, especially with the queen, right? So we didn't want the platforms to kind of get in the way of that. So we're trying to create like a lot of negative space to allow you to kind of move around and not get frustrated or clip corners or things like that.
Yeah. The other thing with the, and this kind of was one of the first things we kind of came to a conclusion on when we went to New York after first, coming to an agreement and deciding to partner with Bumblebear was, in the arcade, you're inches away from a giant, screen in front of you. So those smaller characters are easier to make out. But, whether it's on the Switch, like Mike mentioned, or, you have it in dock mode or you're just, sitting back on your couch, those things become a lot harder to see when they're not right in your face, I guess, like they are in the arcade. So that's why the map is a little bit smaller, characters a bit bigger, just kind of, tweaking between those two things. Other than that, I don't remember how I think it was just through lots of, game, doing testing and stuff like that we kind of, we made it really easy. So it's kind of just a config file that you could live update. So you could tweak things like the speed of flight, speed of the runners, tune the jump parameters. So the kind of pace of the game, I think largely just came through, trial and error and just iterating, over and over again.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I was gonna ask, with all these changes, so new weapons, smaller maps, 4 versus 4, you can throw berries and such. Like, how was that balancing act that you guys did? Like, the arcade game is extremely well balanced, but I would also say the console game is too. How'd you accomplish that?
That's really a testament to Bumblebear Games, to be honest. We worked every day with those guys, like not side by side, like telecomming, right? But they were heavily involved in the design process. We did a ton of play testing. We knew, and through the beta, to be honest, too. We did a lot. We put it in people's hands. We watched replays of the game. We saw what was working, what wasn't. I remember one thing in particular. I think as a gag, I added berry tossing. Like I just kind of added it one day. I was just like as a hack, I'm like, hey guys, check this out. This is kind of cool. And it made it in, right? But like the repercussions of that are like it trickles. It's like, okay, well, if runners can just toss berries now. If you can get really good at that, you can just like rush through an econ win, and then it became overpowered, right? Which debalances the whole game. And so we were like kicking around. We almost removed it actually because of that. We were almost like, do we need to take berry throwing out? This is getting out of hand. And then Josh DeBonis, Bumblebear Games. I think he worked with Nick on this, but they decided to like just kind of nerf the speed of the throw, I believe it was.
And we tried to, we used to have a longer cooldown, I think. I don't think anyone really likes the feel of a cooldown. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to minimize that as much as possible, but not, make it 0 so people can just stand on berry piles and just throw them out. They still can do that in a way today, but it's not as bad as it was at times. And I think he moved a lot of, that's where the berry piles being hanging vertically. Or hanging from like ceilings. That was so that
you have to have that jump.
Yep, you'd have to do that jump to get it. So that was like kind of a cool way to like not have this as bad of a cooldown feel. but still kind of delay that ability, just clear out a pile and just throw them all on the ground.
But what's funny about it is it's like one more concern for the game designer when they're creating a level. It's like I can't place a berry pile like in a direct lane to the hive because people can just like spam throw them in really quickly.
Yeah, except for that one map where you put that very alluring pile right between the two hives.
Oh yeah, tally. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah. That one always gets a lot of fun. And one thing that we have seen from berry throwing is teams get really good at throwing to each other.
Yeah,
Actually,
So you'll have one person kind of stationed in the hive, making sure all the berries actually make it in. It's really fun, actually. So I gotta ask, you have bots in the game, so you can fill in spots with hypotenuse and other awesome named bots. How did you go about making the AI? Because they seem really good. I mean, was this like a big trial and error process? Did you have any like funny moments where they were doing something unintended?
Oh yeah, tons of those. It still happens. But I think I started on a version of the AI a while back. And then Josh and Nick knew a student at NYU, Ahmed, who, kind of jumped in and helped us out and, got busy with, being in school and whatnot. So there's a point where he kind of, got the ball rolling. And, it's one of those things that, when you're doing some of the pathing, it's hard to do in line with map changes as the maps are evolving. It might expose some sort of edge case or, basically an unsolvable issue that the AI runs into. So, I mean, we've had all sorts of like runners just standing still at times, and so it's a little bit of both. I mean, we kind of knew certain approaches we wanted to do, but there was also just a lot of trial and error to see what situations they would get in, like what might be going on inside of their AI brains, and trying to figure out how to get around that. So
yeah, it's funny. It's like I'm at Khalifa. Shout out to him at NYU. He helped us a ton there. But I kind of took over. He had to pull off at one point. I kind of adopted all of that code and tried to bring it home. One of the challenges was like some of our maps, like they're in order to deposit berries, you have to do some kind of like tricky moves in certain maps. I'm terrible with the map names, but there's like one where it's like you have to like jump on a tiny little ledge in like the middle of the hive, and then you have to like jump out, and there's like 3 holes. The only way you can get them is by doing that. And I think I had to like write specific code just to handle like that, right? So it's like if we ever release a new level, or like when we're actually getting close to our designers working on one right now, I'm sure I'm gonna have to load the level up, and it's like who knows what's gonna break. So
you just have workers running around in a circle. You're like, oh no.
Yeah, throwing up question marks. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's awesome. I will say, like, especially as workers, man, they just seem to be doing something useful most of the time. So it's nice to see. So I saw some of the footage of you guys and your team and Bumblebear at Nintendo Treehouse that you guys briefly spoke on what it was like working with Nintendo. Based on that conversation, I mean, you got it running on Switch really quickly, at least an initial build. Is that true?
Yeah. We had to. It was by the time we decided or figured out we were going to E3, and by the time we had to be ready for E3, like there wasn't much time. So thankfully, it was a really smooth process to get up and running.
For the most part.
Yeah.
I mean, so we use Unity, right? For anybody who's in the game dev or heard of Unity.
Oh, okay.
So, they shipped us a few dev kits, pretty quickly, and I just got rolling on it and fixed errors as they came up. But I think within a day, I got it at least like compiling, and then by the end of the week, you could actually play a game. But then like we had a bunch of performance issues because the Switch is like. It's an amazing console. I love it, but like the hardware on it leaves a lot to be desired. And even though we're just a little pixel game and the camera doesn't move and stuff, you'd be surprised. Like there were some issues there, but we were able to get it going, and it ran pretty great at E3. We didn't have any issues. I was really surprised. Like save for a few minor bugs, but they were actually just gameplay bugs that would have been there anyway. So
yeah.
Yeah, I bet that was a relieving feeling when like you didn't have any big crash moments or anything like
No.
that.
Yeah, especially when they came down to our booth.
Yeah.
I think Mike and I were playing. It was just like, please don't crash now. Of all the times, don't crash now.
I don't think we got one crash.
No.
Yeah, we're really lucky there.
So can you talk about a little bit about the response that you've had to the game, both on Switch and other platforms? Has it met the expectations that you kind of set forward through it? Has it been better, or what's it been like?
This whole thing has been really surreal, right? Because like we've never built a game before, and we worked with a contractor that helped us out a ton, especially during like the later parts of development and getting ready. And he's been working in the industry for a long time in some capacity, and he's like, first of all, he's like, I can't believe this is your first game. This is a lot to take on, like all this networking stuff and everything. It's crazy. He seemed pretty confident. He's like, you guys are going to do okay. But like, we had no idea, right? We had no idea what to expect. So we're like, man, I think internally we were like, man, if we can get like an 8 out of 10 in reviews, that would be awesome. And then like, October 10th, the day before we released the game, all the review sites kind of, put up their reviews. And, I think it started at like 8.5, 8.6 and lowered down a little bit. But like the reviews we got were phenomenal. And I was almost in tears because I was just like, just biting my teeth, just like, so stressed out about it. But when I saw the positive response that people were giving it, that was awesome. And then like we have a pretty active Discord community, and the people in there are great. We have a really great community, and we've been getting a lot of great feedback from them, a lot of great like feature requests, quality of life things. But like for the most part, yeah, we've been really pleased with the response that we've gotten.
And even beyond like the Discord community, we've gone to Logan quite a few times. We've met a good number of the people in the Killer Queen community, the arcade community. And, they travel all over the country going to tournaments, a very tight-knit group. And, you never know how a game that they, spend so much, time and energy and love on, how they're going to respond to it. And they have their own Killer Queen Black room in Slack. And, I've talked to some of them, and they've all just been great. There's clearly differences, and I always tell people it's an evolving project for us. We're not done. We're going to keep adding stuff and keep we try to listen and provide our feedback to others' feedback. But the arcade community's been great, so that was really nice to see as well.
Yeah, I bet that was relieving too, that they're not like, oh man, this is not my Killer Queen.
Yeah, right. And that's always kind of like what we wanted, is the two to kind of, feed off one another and, cross-pollinate. Like we really hope that, people maybe get exposed to Killer Queen Black and then decide to go check out the arcade because they've never done so before. And you should, because it's an awesome game.
Yeah. It definitely is. So one of the differences from the arcade actually is some of this background art in the stages, which is just some of it is just like jaw dropping. It's actually really pretty in this game. Was that kind of something that you guys started with, or was it just something that was added on later on in development? Like how did that art come to be?
I think that's another kind of like a follow-up answer to your previous question about like what are some of the changes when you go to console, versus arcade. Arcade, you get away with very little. It's like you don't really need flashy, fancy graphics. I mean, the gameplay speaks for itself. But we knew to be kind of appealing, maybe I say competitive, like in the industry that we're trying to break out into. We knew we needed to kind of up the game a little bit in terms of like presentation, graphics, things like that. We were very fortunate to come across this amazing artist, and his name's Blake Reynolds, and he did a majority of all of that, like the background arts and stuff. He just did a phenomenal job, like continuously impressed by the work that he's put out. And I mean, most of what you see there in terms of like gameplay art is his doing, and he just did a phenomenal job.
And he did a lot of the concept stuff too. It wasn't just like taking someone's idea. Awesome. Like he would I mean, he would look at pictures of bugs over and over and just like get ideas from that. It was almost like too technical, but it really paid off. Even like the gates. A lot of people don't realize when it closes, it kind of gets this like mantis or insect head that it kind of forms into, and that was all just like him coming up with some concepts, and then Mike and I weren't always involved in those calls, but it'd be bringing Nick and Josh and Matt. They'd have like an art review that would just they would just tweak stuff. He would like live edit things in Photoshop and show him as he's going. But he's absolutely incredible.
That's awesome. I mean, similarly, you also have kind of an awesome soundtrack, and the one thing I've really grown to like about the game is how the soundtrack is kind of developed in the sound effects of the game. So as the workers promote or get berries or stuff, it all kind of forms this musical soundtrack. Were you guys ever tempted to actually have music playing in the background of the matches, or was that always kind of the design going forward?
A great question. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure why we decided not to do music during gameplay.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that was another thing, like similar to the art calls they'd have audio reviews. And that was definitely something that people had different opinions on, on whether they should or shouldn't. But I don't know definitive reason or who won that argument, but it was definitely something that, and one's the wrong word. It's just something that was debated for quite a while. And then we decided to go with this. Sometimes, the background music can get a little like distracting and kind of, and those with so much going on in the game, like picking up on what those cues are, I think really helps you. So like if you turned down the sound effects or turned up like, background music, you might lose some of those clues that you're, trying to pay attention to.
Right. I've kind of noticed that as you play the game, you can kind of tell what's going on without seeing it, which is neat. I like the way it's done personally. Just curious about it. So I'm going to get into a few of the more fun questions here. So of you guys, what would you say is your favorite win condition in this game?
Ooh, good question. I mean, how can you not say snail, right? I mean, it's so just rewarding, especially when you sneak in and they have no idea. I'll even get a little, what's the word I'm looking for? Cocky, I guess. Just like start throw up haha emojis before I get there, But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm more military. Like I always played like first person shooters and stuff growing up. Like I was just always kind of more action Rambo based, kind of go in, and do some carnage. So I'd probably gravitate towards military.
I guess I would say econ. I mean, part of the game is like, 3/4 of the military victories are probably because someone put the queen in a situation they shouldn't be in because they added pressure from the berries or from snail. But I like the teamwork aspect, and I love some of the battles that happen like at the entrance to a hive, where it's just or like even blocking that as a warrior is just such a good feeling when you're just stopping them from getting that last berry in.
Yeah, and what's interesting about like military victories is like if you ever watch, Bumble Bear just did Bumble Bash, which is like their yearly tournament that they hold for the arcade game.
Sure.
And if you ever watch like gameplay, like top tier players, those games can go on for like 15 minutes, like no joke. Like our games are usually like a minute if we're lucky. It's like usually really short.
90 seconds.
I think a lot of that is because you give the queen such a powerful weapon. Like she can dash and dive. She's all over the place. But like players, I don't think have quite realize how precious the queen is, and they kind of just go all out. So I'm interested to see how the meta evolves there. If like people start playing more of like a conservative queen style, and see if the match or the games start getting a little bit longer, or what happens there. But
yeah, for sure. And we actually had a little poll. It was only up for about an hour, but I think snail win was like 86% of the votes or something like that. It was crazy. Okay, what is your favorite skin and dance for the workers?
Checkers.
Same.
Yeah.
The robot.
Yeah, and I mean, robot aside, I've always liked his outfit before. We didn't add that till kind of late in the dev process. It's one of those nice to have things, but I'm so glad we did add it, but it is my favorite dance too.
Totally. What was that? Was it we were just joking around or whatever? We were saying, like, wouldn't it be hilarious if we had an outtake of, like, Checkers doing the robot dance at post-match, and then, like, he trips and falls off the platform.
Spins and gets too wound up.
That's awesome. Yeah, and most people have to kind of learn that you can make them dance, but Checkers has been my favorite from day one, which actually that leads me to, does the snail or the workers or the queen, do you guys have internal names for them?
I can answer the snail one because I jokingly, someone asked that in Discord and I gave the first name that came off the top of my head and everyone kind of jumped on it, so I guess it's canon now. I said Winston is the snail's name.
Yeah. I don't know if we get in trouble for that because, like, it's really Bumble Bear's lore. But.
Well, I was talking to one of the game designers, Chris Wallace, that helped us out, and we decided they're different snails between the games. So.
Okay. Yeah, that works.
Fair enough. That's awesome. I'm gonna start using that. Do you have a favorite snail pun or joke that you keep coming back to with this game? Because it can get kind of memey, which is great.
Snail ones, I'm not sure.
I usually don't hear snail ones. Why? Like, do you have any? Like, what are some you've heard?
Oh, I don't know. This is one of our listeners being weird. No, we actually started gathering these questions, and inevitably somebody said the same question that somebody else did, and we all jumped on that as you just snailed them because you asked this. It's the opposite of ninja, but
snailed it. I've said before.
Yeah, I guess I don't have.
And I mean, that just reminds me of at the not this past Bumble Bash, but the one before that. We went up there to Portland for it, and we brought some Switches and had like the first Killer Queen Black tournament. And me, Matt, and Mike formed a team, and our name was Chuck Berry. Would you like that one?
That's awesome.
Barry White.
that one's a deep one. I like that. Okay. How many different end scenes are there, such as like headshot, that kind of thing?
I think they finally found them all by playing custom match, but let me see if I can count them out. 1, 2, 4, 7, I want to say. I guess I could just look at the code, but I want to say it's 7.
Do you have a favorite? Mine is probably That's Amore.
Yeah, that's definitely it.
Amore, yeah, that's a great one. That one was actually found pretty quick. I think it was like maybe a day or two after we launched or something.
Yeah, we saw it a couple.
Found it on the first day by complete accident.
Yeah. We'd see it at like PAX or something. People had never played the game and it would just happen. It was pretty cool. Our artist, Ika, when she made that one, and she did all like the UI, basically the non-pixel stuff that we were talking about from our other artist. She actually had listed out what all of those chocolates were. In great detail, like what's sprinkled on them, what's inside of them.
Swizzle.
So who knows? Maybe come Valentine's Day, we'll have those on the merch site. Yeah.
I hope so.
And just a couple more. Are there any other games that you guys are playing in the office that you really like now? Any other influential games or games that are important to you? Like, what's your favorite game?
Games that we play in the office, Towerfall, I think, is probably the biggest one.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, no, anytime I've seen their game compared to that, it just blows my mind, because that's one of my favorite games in the last couple of years, and we have an Xbox sitting at the office, and so we would just fire it up and play all the time.
Funny thing about Towerfall, right? Like, obviously, like, our game wraps around the screen, and to be honest, that was one of the things that gave me the biggest headache developing this game. I got that wrong so many times. So many bugs, like people just getting lost in the wrap or like attacks not
fall off the screen.
And like I remember we'd be like playing Towerfall late at night, and like if you get one of the upgrades in Towerfall, the whole screen moves and like everything's wrapping. I'm like, oh my god! How did they do that?
As I started playing your game, I kind of remembered back to Towerfall, kind of using we don't want this game to be online, because it is kind of a twitchy game, and lag is actually important. Real quick, have you guys reached out to Matt Thorson?
Said, hey, your game online.
You don't have to answer that.
No, haven't done
Well,
that.
let me write that down.
Yeah.
I think you definitely should reach out to him and say, look what we did. But because I love Towerfall too, I just wish it was online so I could actually, play with more people.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but like, I love that game so much just because the way it feels, like just the movement mechanics, just so on point, and that carried over to Celeste, obviously.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite game last year. Was Celeste.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my game of the year last year for sure. It was awesome. Finally, I think. Well, no, two more. This is an odd question. I apologize in advance. What is your favorite chess piece if you play chess?
Oh wow.
I don't really know why this one was
That's an
asked.
interesting question.
Mine's probably Knight.
I never played a lot of chess. I didn't like the Knight because, like, when I was a kid, I always had a hard time figuring out what the right moves were.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe the Rook.
Okay.
Maybe the Rook.
I'd probably go Bishop there.
Bishop? Yeah, Bishop. Yeah, the diagonal moves are pretty alright.
And one final question for you guys, unless you have anything else you want to talk about. Are you reaching out to Nintendo to get like Queen or Snail or somebody into Smash Brothers? 'Cause I think there might be potential.
We haven't
there.
done it yet, but that's been brought up before. It would be a dream come true to see that.
Could you imagine?
or at worst a Killer Queen stage, which would actually be kind of awesome too.
Yeah,
that
that
was
would.
so cool.
No, I mean, who knows? Maybe one day, but we've definitely brought that up before. How cool that'd be a dream.
Mm-hmm.
It really would be awesome. And I mean, is there anything else you guys want to talk about here? Anything else you're working on that you want to let us know about, or we can end it here? It's okay.
No, I mean, honestly, I think all I really want to say is just thank you to everybody that's checked out the game. I mean, we put a ton of work into it, and to see the feedback from the community has really made it worth it. So just thank you to everybody that's played.
The feature requests, I mean, yeah, just everything, like, especially during our beta, I mean, there were some rough builds that we put out. I mean, like, so everyone that played in the beta too, like, the game wouldn't be what it is without you guys helping, so thank you.
100%.
No, that is awesome. And honestly, thank you guys so much for coming on here. I think this was awesome. Had a lot of fun actually hearing some of the background behind some of the decisions that were made. It's actually great. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
I love your game, so.
Awesome, thanks.
This is great. But with that, so Mike, Adam, thank you so much for coming on the show, and we look forward to more updates in the future.
Great, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.